Buildex, drawings, specs, and 2 guests. Let's get into it. Welcome to What the RFI. I'm Matt Brennan, and this is the podcast all about CA. And today we're at Buildex with Dory and Jason. Before I even get into it, I'm just going to let you guys introduce yourself, and away we go. So
go for it. Take away, Dory.
All right. My name is Dory Azar. I'm a licensed architect in the province of Ontario, and I work at R.I.B. SpecLink now as we're a few different hats, but if you called me the brand ambassador, I think that's the catch-all.
No.
And I'm Jason Hicks. I work at R.I.B. SpecLink as well. My responsibilities are to prepare the content that we put in our software platform. So I'm a technical writer by trade. I've been a consulting spec writer for 20 plus years, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. And how are you finding the show right now? Good entertainment, lots of traction.
It started kind of slow, and it really ramped up towards lunch. So I'm a people watcher. I love that.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a good little intersection here to see people coming and going. But I think it's now starting to fill out a little bit. It's good,
Right.
Good times.
And have you checked out a couple of the events and like the actual talks and stuff? Have you sat through some of them?
That's kind of difficult for us. We really want to be able to engage the customer.
Yeah.
So manning the booth is the primary function for us to be here. We do have opportunities to see some of the education sessions.
Yeah.
I think we might take in some of those later in the day or tomorrow. But yeah, we're here to interact with people and.
Yeah. No, very cool. And then if you're not manning booths and stuff like that, what are you guys doing for fun? You know,
Podcasts.
Oh, always.
The industry-leading podcasts.
Of course, that's the way to do it.
You mean outside of outside of work?
Like that little bit of time. I don't know where we have it, but that little bit of a moment. So.
I mean, fun just to...
Yeah. What do you guys do?
Oh, geez. I spend a ton of time creating content on social media, which I think you know that.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I am a drummer. I've been playing the drums for
Nice.
since I was 13, so I absolutely love playing the drums. Hockey, golf, the basics. The basics. But yeah, that's just me.
That's you, Jason?
Yeah, I'm coming to the end of one of those milestones where my kids are starting to move out. So I'm starting to realize that there's things that I liked other than fathering. And
Yeah.
so, I'm interested in kind of weird stuff. I think being a technical writer or a specification writer by trade, we always kind of gravitate to sort of the introverted things that people like. So, science fiction, reading, lots of books. I'm into watches. We do outdoor activities with the kids. So we ski as a family and stuff. And, raise a family of 4. It's fun.
That's a challenge. Got 3 of my own. 4, that just goes even.
It's expensive.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah. I have 2, so you guys can teach me all your tips and tricks.
I'll move to the East Coast. It's a little cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right.
Don't live in BC.
Step 1, relocate your entire life.
No, that's it. Yeah. So, mention specs a few times. What's your position on specs? Like, why, again, I've talked about specs on the show in that respect and the importance, but people have heard me. Why is specs important to you? Why do you think it makes the job, there's a time that, specs aren't even required? Because, again, different jobs have such minimal specs.
Right.
Where do you see on it? What's your take on it?
Do you want to? Because to me, they're an extension of the drawings, right? Like they're that second half of a project. So where we all know the drawings are showing you, quantities and measured distances and relationships between materials. Where the specs are taking over is
it's a communication tool, really.
Yeah.
Specs and is graphical representation to communicate design intent. And the complementary documents between the drawings and the specifications are there to convey design intent.
Yeah.
So the better the specs, the clearer the design intent is to the person bidding the job.
Yeah.
And if your documents are clear and concise, easy to understand, you're going to have less problems during the construction phase.
Yeah.
So for me, specification writing is an art in the sense that you're really trying to hone the craft to the point where anybody can pick them up, understand what you're trying to get at, put a price to it because we're soliciting bids through these contract documents, and a fair price so that nobody's losing money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The owner's not paying through the nose for change orders because your documents weren't clear or you missed thing, and your contractor's not doing extra work because he forgot to bid this piece of the work, or the scope of work wasn't as he thought it would be because it was the documents weren't clear enough. So specification and the drawings to me are, really tools to provide, give the owner what they want, what their vision was from when they sat down with the architect or the engineer. Translate my vision in writing so that somebody can see it.
Right. And it levels the playing field of a project too, right? So like you said, if you're putting this out for bid, I mean, the tighter the drawings, the tighter the specs, the owner is going to benefit from a well put together set of documents.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're all about CA, but hopefully entering that phase is not an absolute disaster, as it never is, but it could be.
And that was kind of my question. Is like we can have bad drawings. I've seen bad drawings. You've probably seen bad drawings.
Yeah. Bad
specs. Can we work with bad specs? Do you find? Is it can you make do, or have you worked with a pair of bad specs before? Have you seen?
Well, I've never built bad specs.
Oh, of course, that's right. We'll get into that.
I can't speak to that, but I know.
I don't know what bad specs are.
Oh, good answer.
Listen. You sign a contract with bad specs, your contract admin phase is not going to go smoothly.
Yeah.
Right? I think most people would agree. If a bad set of bidding documents turns into a cumbersome contract, and then everybody's, RFIs go up, change orders go up, the client's not happy, there's a lot of finger pointing around the table. I love getting around a table with people that are losing money and pointing at me because I missed something.
That's right.
Yeah.
So 100%.
Yeah. No, that's I lost my train of thought because there's something I was going to say to add to that.
Bad specs, bad drawings. You got to have both. They got to be good, because you're right. If you don't, it basically it's a foundation. If it doesn't go in together well, and there was one school project I worked on. I felt the drawings were pretty rock solid. It was an addition. It was everything. But this time we tried, rather than using our own personal specs that we really bulletproof over the years and updating and all that, we used a new spec writer. And we thought, okay, let's try this out. And that was the part I was so scared of the job. If the job's going to have extras, it was going to be because of his work. And it was weird because it was calling up for a certain type of pea gravel as backfill. And the contractor was like, do you really want me grabbing pea gravel for this area? And it was just weird specs. And, in the end, I left to join part 3 in that. So I didn't get to see all the change orders that came from it. But that was the one thing that was scaring me. So I agree.
I remember what I was going to say now is that a bad spec or a bad drawing generally will always come up at some point, right? You can only shirk those bad decisions or those mistakes or there's errors and omissions for so long because somebody's going to build that, right?
Yeah.
Every line, every number, every sentence is being scrutinized. Well, it should be read, should be scrutinized and questioned. And so if you're missing stuff or stuff's wrong, it will get flagged at some point in the process, and it'd be way more expensive to fix it than it would be to just have it prepared properly up front.
Exactly. And since we're talking about specs, for the ones that are watching this episode, we got SpecLink.
Yeah.
You guys are the experts. You're the one that's using it. Sure, plug it.
All right.
What is it?
So for anybody who doesn't know what SpecLink is, SpecLink is a spec writing platform that helps you write your specs sort of faster and more accurately. And what that means is it's two things. It is the software itself, but it's also, and Jason being our content writer, you get almost 800 sections of specs that come pre-written with the software. Yeah. But the software is based on linking so for example, if we open up a section, I say, hey, I need a hollow metal door, and I click on that I want a hollow metal door, it's also going to activate the fact that you need a hollow metal frame, probably some hardware, probably all the associated things to go with it. So it's really like specs by inclusion. So you have all of this content that's available, and you get to say, I want that, I don't want that, I want that. That's kind of the nuts and bolts of it, because you can connect things. So every time I click on this, also add these things. Now, in addition to that, there's a lot of great things like our reference standards are always kept up to date because it's a cloud-based platform. So when you start your next project, so you're not using that like reference standard from like 1942
and
that nobody
different testing, ULC testing,
or it doesn't even exist anymore or anything like that. All of those are kept up to date on the back end by us.
Right.
And there's a lot of big global things that happen. So, for example, if you needed to do any kind of submittal reports or anything like that, those are one-button clicks because you've tagged certain things along the way.
Yeah.
If you need, I know a lot of engineers work with architects who want their things done a very specific way, right?
Yeah.
So we have a template that you can just globally change the whole entire spec in one click. Headers and footers are updated like in one spot with one click. So it's really like taking the mundane stuff out of it, optimizes it, and lets you just focus on crafting a proper spec.
Do you find that there's still... I find the architectural industry, and I did talk about this yesterday with another group and stuff, is I find that they're very slow to adopt. Architects. Like, look at the AutoCAD to Revit world. Like, that took years.
And it's still happening.
And we're still on AutoCAD. And I'm just kind of shaking my head. I'm like, you can have the kid down the road who's going to be, doing the job in half the time.
That's the uphill battle for us with this software platform is we get architects, engineers that have been writing specifications in Microsoft Word for years. And they're busy. They invest a lot of time in the drawings and working on the drawings and doing that graphic communication on the plans. Sometimes the specs come late during design development and during working drawing production. And they will defer to the last project that they did. So that whole process of pulling out a spec from a similar job that you've done in the past that worked reasonably well is still it's a habit that is hard to break. And to go to a database-driven and a cloud-based software platform is a little bit intimidating. It's occasionally. So the adopting a new way to do your internal process, your internal production, can be intimidating. So I think that's one of the biggest uphill battles that we have is convincing somebody that's writing specs that there's a better alternative than just Microsoft Word. Those 800 sections that you have in a folder on your hard drive that which ones do I need? Drag them over to the project folder.
Right.
We're just providing, I think, a better tool, a more technologically savvy design.
Yeah, exactly.
And architects make big leap decisions all the time.
Right? Like engineering. We got to cut it back.
Right. Like we're not afraid of making big tough decisions, right? Even if you at some point went from manual drafting to CAD drafting, from CAD drafting to BIM, from using a product you've never used before, hiring an employee that you've never hired. Like we're used to taking risks and investing in large ideas. But there is still that, I think, adopting new things just takes a leap. Right?
Yeah, and it does. And like change is, like I said, the revolution. Meeting with architects every day, there's better things, but it's just that it's a the whole unlearn, pivot, and learn again kind of stuff. And it's if you can get through that, and that's it. But at the end of the day, like if you're not going to do it, someone else is going to.
Absolutely.
And at that point, they're going to overtake where you are. And two, at the end of the day, we all share the same thing as time. So do you want to be doing mundane tasks, editing all the cover pages? Or would you like just to change one thing and boom, it's done? Or like you said, new specs come out for this door hardware and then, they've changed it, they discounted it.
Well, that's the big thing about these types of software editing platforms is the first thing that you did when you're building something like this is what are the repetitive, mundane tasks that we can automate to take that out of the cycle.
Exactly.
Right. So header layouts, using global terms repeatedly in the specification, whether it's for the contractor, whatever it might be, departmental representative versus owner versus architect versus engineer. So take the mundane out, automate it, make it very efficient, and then that'll save you so much time.
Exactly.
Even like the pull down, the choice fields that we have. So if you have a certain type of door finish, right, whether it's a flush face or whatever, various finishes, we have those all as pull downs. So you're not losing any information. You just pick it from a list, and if that door changes later, you just come back in and it's still on the list. You just pick the different one. So it's really. And what's cool about that too is it SpecLink keeps everything in one file, one source of truth. Like all the things are there. you can like start conversations within SpecLink. So have commenting. We have a commenting tool where you can go back and forth a million times about this product or that product and import cut sheets. So it's really. I think once people see it, like we've done a lot of demos where if they're reluctant, once they see it, they're like, oh, like anything else, you're a little intimidated by it until you get into it yourself.
And then you get moving. Yeah.
I was like that with Revit when I adopted Revit. It was like it was just a one day like almost angry like that's it. I'm like that's it.
How do I do this? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to draw. I'm drawing a wall.
I was using it for like I had some good experience. I had a boss. It was like in 2005 introduced me to Revit, and it was like, okay, that was pretty early in the Revit game, but we would use it a little bit for renderings or some 3D stuff here and there, not to its full potential. And then eventually I was on my own. It was like, and then I went back to AutoCAD because it was kind of safer, and then you're like, this is ridiculous. So you just got to use the heavy hitting software, right? You got to it's doing more per click, and that's it.
So the big topic, and I don't know if there was too many at this session or at this conference, but AI is talking. Are you guys using AI to help for specs? We're using AI to take the specs, the shop drawings, and review the two in real time on part 3.
I heard
which is
about
really
that.
cool, and it's flagging. Well, it actually did even before that. The fun conversation of going to the contractor saying, like, look, I want to get a shop drawing schedule from you. And you never get it, right? I only got one my whole entire career. Where this changes the game, I'm so excited. I've only met a few that are passionate about it. Basically, upload the specs into the software. It creates the full shop drawing schedule for you. And now you're versus saying, contractor, I don't need the schedule. You're going to log in and just give me all these items I need. I've actually categorized them by hot leads, long leads, etc. And then they start uploading their cut sheets. So say if it was a window shop drawing, well, we wanted Starline windows, and the shop drawing was Centra. It's going to flag and go, it's not matching.
Doesn't match.
And it does a peer review, and then it goes through testing and colors and warranty and all these things. Like even doing it for 22 years, it's a checklist. Right. I never issue a set of drawings without going through my checklist. Right. It's the same thing. So 100%. Like, are you guys playing with that and somehow like? So I don't know how.
So that's not in my domain. I'm pretty sure it's not in your. We have to edit this out.
Our software development team, I'm sure, right on top of that. Most of the stuff that we do, like the linking that we build into our master specifications that I do as part of our production team, our content development team, that's a form of AI, because when the user gets it, they're clicking on one section and it's activating other things. So we're building in intelligent tools to help them edit the specification down. Do we use AI in some other capacity? I would be surprised if we didn't. We're a software company.
No, it is.
I'm not sure how they do it.
And maybe these guys can answer it for us a little after. But no, that's I'm not responsible for AI at SpecLink.
Because that's like with lawyers, like it's almost similar to specs. Like that's one market, and maybe it is, but I haven't seen it. But you know what I mean? A lawyer like using AI to find that section, that case, or whatever. Like seriously, like that's not wrong. It's not cheating.
Yeah, it's just
being smart with your time. You can build a house with a hammer. Or I can build it with a nailer. I'm going to go so much quicker. And
at the end of the day,
until it jams and all that kind of stuff, and then you're going to laugh, and it's
but I'm still ahead of you. But I'm still ahead of you.
Exactly. The tortoise and the hare scenario here. So
exactly, that's exactly right.
But so with specs, what for a young architect or someone who's doing, when do you think specs should start to be created in the job? So we've met with the client, we've gone into the schematics. The next steps eventually is going to be BP, DPs before that, eventually construction documents, and then tender. Do we want to bring it in literally like a few weeks before tender, or when do you based
as
on
an architect, sure, but as a spec writer, he'll give you a different answer.
What do you think?
That's more common when it comes in last minute. But listen, if you take any of the education programs in Canada, Construction Specifications Canada has those education programs. I think the overwhelming theme is the specification writer should be involved as early as possible in the design phase, because generally they're going to provide value to product selection and all the decision-making process that starts really on project inception. Somebody already has a concept of what they want. And having the specification writer in early can help, might prevent a value engineering exercise later during design development. So get them in early, but they're also rare. And if you have one in your office, they're probably very busy. So I think most spec writers come around working drawing phase. Like we have concept, we have schematic design, we have a program, so we know what we're doing. We're about to start working drawings. I think that's a really good time for a spec writer to get involved in the project at that level.
Now, is that probably just in a typical, or what we might call a typical project? But
I think that's my experience. Well, and that's just my opinion. I think other people probably disagree. Maybe get him in earlier during design development.
So we're talking as an external spec writer, right?
No, even your internal person.
Intern?
Well, that's the other thing. There's a lot of people hiring consultant spec writers in Canada right now because if you're a consulting spec writer, it's nice to be able to pick your client.
Yes.
Right? So for the few, not the few, but the larger companies, engineering or architectural companies that have staff in-house that write specifications, I'm going to guarantee nobody's sitting around waiting to be invited to a building permit review or a schematic design meeting. They're busy. They're doing something.
They're already on. They're queued up and
so
everything.
They're multitaskers. So just trying to figure out when's the best use of their time internally is everybody's going to have a different formula for that.
Right.
Exactly.
So
and I agree, Jason. Like that's where I found, like after BP, it was like, all right, you can come to the table now. Let's start having those conversations. Just getting your mind started to think about. We're still figuring all the materials out. You know what I mean? But it can start kind of getting it going. The owner's going to come on the Friday and go up. Can I have a chance to look at the specs? And then you're like, I guess we'll just copy the last job or something, right? And that's.
Look at listen, spec review is onerous.
It is.
Somebody's going to give you a PDF or a hard copy, and it's going to have 500 plus pages in it. So, when do I have time, uninterrupted, to sit down and start going through this? And traditionally, people would mark that up with a red pen or something. Now,
sticky notes.
I think that's some of the value in the type of software platform that we have is that somebody can come into the project very early and start making line-by-line comments. So we have a commenting feature that allows people to do that. So I think the software platform that we have with some of the bells and whistles built into it, the collaboration features, makes that process a little bit easier. So it would be good. I'd love to query some of the people that use it on a regular basis. How do you guys review the specification? When do you start reviewing it? Have you found that your spec production started earlier now that you're using a spec editing platform as opposed to just putting together some Microsoft Word sections?
Because SpecLink does allow you to be more fluid earlier on, right?
Yeah.
So
for sure.
You can adjust sort of mid-project by unchecking those things, checking those things. Like it's still keeping you on the rails.
I can stick a data sheet in where the Windows spec is. This is what I want.
Yeah, and you're right, and that's where it starts to speed up. Where to the point where you don't need front desk renaming all the titles or taking the notes from the architect. She has no idea. She's like, I think that's spelt this way. And
Matt, I've looked at it like this. It's like using BIM is kind of like the adoption of, using SpecLink is like adopting BIM, right? Like it's doing more. So in Revit, with each wall you draw, it's like generating information. It's generating quantities. It's generating volumes. And I think SpecLink is you can look at it similar to that. It's just doing, with every little click you do, it's building out, it's robust. It's doing a lot more heavy lifting.
Exactly. That's right. So with all the specs, do's versus don'ts, what are some things that you'd recommend, like from your years' experience, that absolutely do this and don't do that? Just don't.
My experience is what I referred to earlier, is I'd rather spend the extra time on them up front and make sure they're as waterproof as possible, watertight as possible, because something will get caught along the way. Once they leave your hands, then it's out of your hands, and somebody else's, any of those errors could come up if you just kind of skipped over something. So for me, it's always about as high quality as possible before they leave your office.
Because like one example, and you can jump into it, Jason, is like I found quantities were very dangerous. So like there was one job, it was a school job. The drawings were perfect. It had, the 12 basketball hoops in there, pretty straightforward, but the specs called for 9. And it was the contractor did the whole specs rule. And we had to write up a CO because the specs rule.
Yep.
And that kind of stuff. So those were things that we started really kind of going to make it dummy proof, to pull stuff back out of the specs of quantities, or like finish schedules, that the colors would be noted on the finish schedule, but the product was in the specs. And that worked out really well, but I'm sure there was things that the contractor would pick up, and you got something to say.
It's hard coordination, right? So drawings and specifications and finish schedules, all that information has value in those locations. The worst thing you can do in a spec is start duplicating information, putting quantities that are clearly shown on the drawing and having quantities shown in the specification. So whenever you're duplicating the information, it's harder to maintain that spec during the bidding phase, right? So if somebody comes in and luckily shares the information saying, I was reviewing this, I'm putting a bid together. You've got 12 basketball backstops shown on the drawings, but it says 9, quantity of 9 in the specification. Which is it? Well, we can write an addendum during the bidding phase to correct that coordination. But when you start duplicating information from the drawings to the specification or vice versa, you're really setting yourself up for some type of conflict between those documents. So, specification writers and people that do drawings, there's the rule of thumb of say it once and say it in the right place. So there's experience from being a spec writer or somebody that's producing drawings that says for you to know where that right place is. So that does take experience, but I think that's one good rule of thumb is say it once and say it in the right place.
And that's a beautiful segue into, what would be better to put on drawings that you wouldn't do on specs and vice? Like we know the specs and specs, but like kind of the example, the quantities and stuff. Is there something else that comes to mind that, light bulb moment of going, oh my goodness, never put that in specs. Definitely going to detail like that. Like we're not going to call up screws or something like that on the drawings and that kind of thing. But we've seen some people do that. So, I don't know. And ULC ratings, like we put those on the sheets. So we found that really helpful, right? But
I'm chuckling because I did have a screws on the drawings conversation once in my life. So.
Yeah, look, contractors' means and methods. Contractors, each contractor works differently during, erection of steel structures. There's a lot of rules that they follow. So the last thing you want to do is tell them how to do their work. Because if they have a way that works for them and they're successful, they've been in business for a while, and they're not in the courtroom all the time, obviously their way is probably good enough. So don't try to tell them what to do in the specification. It's what I see people in Part 3 of the spec, where the execution part of the specification, they talk about do this, do this, do this. I like people to sort of rely on industry standard practices for that. If there's a reference standard that's applicable to whatever scope of work you're trying to execute, stick to that. Let the contractors figure out the method of assembly or what type of screws they're going to use. Sure, you want stainless steel screws because we're in a coastal climate. That's a specification item. But screw size, you got to know what the substrate is. You got to know what the pullout. Let the contractor do some of the hard lifting because that's what you're paying them for. So I don't like to specifically in the spec use that as a tool to tell the contractor how to do their job. And if they're bidding it quick, they don't have a lot of time to put it together, they're going to defer back or their default way of doing business, and then they come in and the architect's like, well, we want it done this way, and I didn't bid it that way. Now we're going to have a conversation. It's going to cost somebody money. And let's try to avoid people losing money after you sign the contract.
Oh, exactly. And that's, when it comes to CA, it's always the ultimate goal is not to lose any more money. You may have even been burnt it during the design phase. I've had some jobs where we've seen that, right? So the ultimate was CA. And do you find that the specs are getting updated during CA? Like the job's been awarded, it's being built. Do you find that they kind of are still evolving, or they kind of they're just taking their course?
Well, so you should be you want to be creating a set of as-built that go on to form a set of record documents that survive the whole life of the building, because that's going to form the foundation for future additions to the work. That's going to help you make decision-making process for the next project of similar scope. So, yes, we should be updating the specification during the contract or during the construction phase. Again, our platform allows you to do that quite easily. Yeah. Because, track changes is a very simple tool, but we have that. But you can also add information. You can incorporate your addenda items. You can create an issue for construction set very easily. I agree.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So just going from the bidding phase to that issued for construction set, getting all those changes in, that gives you a nice, clear document to take to the job site. And then, you want to turn over a really good set of record documents to the owner at the end of the job. So you have to incorporate all the information that comes up during construction. Yeah. You're always going to value engineer some stuff. There's going to be opportunities to save money. And if you can save your client a little bit of money, well, let's do that. The design intent's going to be achieved. We want a durable floor finish. Well, it doesn't have to be this tile from Italy. It could be a local manufacturer with the same performance characteristics. What we're going to save, we're going to expedite the construction schedule, but that change should be noted in the documents at some point. Yeah.
And what I found, one thing that we did, and it was a good practice, is so you've finished the school, you've issued the COs. When we're doing the next school for that client or any other client, is go through the previous change orders. Hey, we're designing another steel school. Let's go through what did we get caught on? Well, we spec the wrong, thickness of poly or whatever the case is, and really, like you said, kind of go back to that. And then you're right, you should be updating it. Question is how many?
Practice.
Totally, 100%. And then because you don't want to get burned, especially if it's the same owner.
On the same thing, on the same thing twice.
Same owners, same issue. You missed the parapet detail
this
again.
This happened on the last one. Why is it happening on this one too?
It doesn't look good. No. So
it doesn't look good. Public sector owners are the most difficult ones too, because good clients, great people to be working for, but usually it's a total different group of people during design, and then they hand it off to another group of people during construction, right? So, and communication between those two groups of people may not happen. So what the construction people did and changed may not ever go back to the people during the design part of the project, during project planning. They might not even know you did that. Yeah. So if your record documents have all that information already in it, it's easy to hand that off to the next design team.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. And it makes a world of things. And how are you finding the younger generation? Are we because specs is not a lot of people, no offense, don't like doing specs. It's very special breed.
So
special in quotes.
Special in quotes.
It's not.
It's like door hardware too.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think spec writing is presented to young architects as a thing that could be fun or could be interesting. I know I've spent my share of time in a classroom, and the amount of spec writing that I was taught was within one course of one semester once back in the 1800s. It's not looked at as an important part of an architectural education. Yeah. Which is crazy, because once you get into the real world, then it's the only important part of the process, really. If you've got, the world is litigation happy, right? And I think the specs are probably your safety blanket on a lot of projects.
100%.
So
for sure.
I think there's a lot of young people that are inclined to appreciate technical things. Yeah. And that's exactly what spec writing is. It's writing, and it's construction, it's technical, and I think that skill set exists in young people. I just don't think it's presented to them in a viable way. Yeah. But if they understood the scarcity in the profession, I think if a young person is listening to this right now and considering a career somewhere in architecture, construction, design, if you like the way things go together, oh my God, spec writing is it.
Oh, exactly. And the details of all, like I said, it gets into the fine, like door hardware is so interesting too, because it's not just a hinge, right?
Yeah.
It's all the different height and getting into that. And that's
How far does it open?
Exactly.
Right? How many knuckles does it have?
Totally. It's right. And then of course you get, same thing with anything with spec related, again, fire ratings, and that's a whole another realm, and making sure that this is being followed. And I totally agree. Like, it's never gonna be running out of spec writers, but like you said, the scarcity is very true. And to the point, if someone's struggling at trying to find that start in their architectural career, because offices, why not look at specs? Start getting into that.
And I might be out of line saying this, so don't get mad at me on this.
Here comes the physical part of the podcast.
Yeah. There comes it.
Like you get in. You're attracted to architecture, I think, for the glamour of the end result, right?
Yes, 100%.
Correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a lot of glamour in spec writing.
It's never been really in fashion.
Yeah, like you don't get to drive by a building with your friends and be like, see that control joint there? It's like, that's
8021.7. It's pretty awesome, eh?
Okay.
It's way far superior than Model 82.1, It's just...
that's got glass fiber reinforced sheathing underneath that brick veneer.
Yeah. You could do a whole episode on that, and just people would just be, what the heck is going on?
It's like
different planet.
I'm just picturing like somebody going out on a first date or something.
Exactly.
Like I designed that building. Like, no, you know what's behind that brick?
Yeah, let me tell you, the world and the stories I could tell you.
Do you know what that air cavity behind that brick is actually doing for that building right now?
Do you know? And do you know what it was gonna be before I got on the project?
Oh my goodness! Let me tell you.
I gotta pull over and tell you the rest of the story.
That's right.
So that whole part of being a spec writer and being that technical that go-to technical source in an office environment, because spec writers learn a little bit about everything, enough to be dangerous in conversation with someone. So, when I was doing construction admin for projects that I'd been part of, building the contract documents, I'd show up on site and where's your storage room? Where's your product storage room?
Yeah.
Contractor looked at me kind of funny, and I'd go and I'd walk around, and I could tell by the bags of insulation that was not in the spec.
Right.
So why is that insulation on the job site? Where are you going to use that?
Yeah.
So I had contractors, they see me coming and they're like, oh man, okay, here's the spec writer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even the paint, cans of paint, I know if we didn't spec that manufacturer, that, this is going on the list, guys.
Yeah.
So we're having a meeting tomorrow. Let's talk about all the products that are on this job site that aren't in the contract.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like somebody's giving you a list of things to do. Like, shouldn't that just be followed? Like, isn't it easier to follow the list that you've been provided versus
That's a good point. Yeah.
Having to find substitutions or something else to use instead of the thing that they told you to use?
Yeah. And I agree. And like, people have heard that who've listened to the show, like, I hate alternates because it just opens up the door for, oh, shoot, I didn't think about that. And like a good example was a basketball hoop, right? Where we had this basketball hoop come down, but then it also adjusts in height too. So you could change the regulations and that kind of stuff. Well, an alternate got approved. Well, the alternate didn't have that. And it's like, now it's a fight to get that. Oh, that's more money, right? And it's like, or like I said, or you change a mechanical unit and the breaker size change. And you gotta be really careful with your wording when you do that. So because the electrical may not realize he needs a few more breakers, right?
And this is so it just speaks to the industry too, right? Like I hope it's non-industry people listen to your podcast as well, to just get a sense of like, it's not just like an architect draws a picture on a piece of paper, hands it to a contractor, they shake hands, he gets to work, and magically a building's done. Like how nuanced the entire multi-year process can be on getting anything from an idea to like keys handed over. Like it's so deep. Everything is. Like you said, how many knuckles on that hinge? It's like, how many people even realize that is a term or an option or something that would even, I don't know, it's just a hinge. Yeah.
Well, exactly. And like I said, it goes beyond to those nitty gritty things. And that's what you were saying. Like when that spec book, it's a big book.
It's substantial.
It's substantial. And it's, you see them on site and they're just what it is. But but like you said, it's nice. It gives direction. You've specified it. And we just don't want to, again, as the architect, they're ensuring that the drawings are being met and the specs are being met. Because that is the job when it comes to CA at the end of the day. It really is. So wrapping it up, because I know we've got drinks and wine and time and more networking happening up in a couple hours here, but we all can agree that specs, drawings, they go hand in hand. They got to support each other. They got to talk. You need the spec writer. Any kind of final closing thoughts on that?
Specifications and the drawings should be complementary. When they're conflicting, then you're going to have a problem. So, everybody should have a good internal auditing process before they put a set of documents out for bids. Whether you're using your own your internal checklist or you're using some of the solutions that we offer within our platform, that can't be overlooked. That process can't be overlooked. If you get pushed into a corner, you got to get something out quick. You got a 3-week bidding phase maybe to close down some of those omissions or conflicts. But spend time preparing good documents, and I think the job will go a lot smoother.
Yeah. I see the whole process as really collaborative, right? So to have nobody's working in isolation, right? Your drawings, your architect should be talking to your spec writer, should be talking to your engineer, because those difficult conversations during the design phase, whether there's internal conflict or you want it your way, he wants it his way, just put all that stuff to rest while we still have time, because once it's done, it's gone. It's it's in somebody else's hands.
Those conversations are a lot worse during the construction phase.
Much worse.
Well, and again, been there, done that. It sucks. It really does. And too, like I keep telling like junior staff and everything, like I find there's such a resistance of putting like dimensions on drawings. I'm like, do it, because it takes you click, done, versus when it comes out an RFI, I got to take and formulate the response in half an hour, right? Just do it. It's not like you're going to be penalized for putting that on now. It is what it is. Either I do it or you do it. It doesn't matter.
If it's been drawn to a dimension, it deserves a dimension.
Right? So it's just funny how some are. But no, hands down, where can we find you guys? Where are you? Where are you located again?
The first place people usually stop to find us is our website at RIB-software.com. But if you just Googled SpecLink, you'll find us. I know personally, I'm more than happy to connect online on LinkedIn or any other platform that people want to reach out on. I'm always happy to have conversations and chat with people. So but LinkedIn or on our website is a good way to go.
Jason, are you all over the social side too?
No, sir. I'm a little more. I'm sort of the introverted spec writer that's special in quotes, right? So I like to do my job and I don't put myself out there. But Dory's has a special role within our Canadian business is to make those connections and make us easier to find, and I support him however I can. So if you can get hold of Dory, you can get hold of me.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. No, well, thank you guys so much for being here.
This is awesome.
This was so much fun.
I love that it all worked out.
It did, and I think it tied in. And again, for the listeners, like, they will learn what specs are, like I said, and like, maybe probably already know about it, but for the ones that, again, I find a lot of younger generation are listening, because again, no one talks about the CA side of things, and specs is kind of almost one of those things that you kind of get into, like, what the heck is this book? That's following. Oh, that's interesting. Look through and it's like, oh, I have no idea what this is saying.
I'll add to that too. So I host the webinar that we do called Spec Talk, and we've done dedicated episodes for specs for young architects or young professionals to be exposed to spec writing. So if there's a takeaway from today, that'd be a good one. Exactly. Like it's a wonderful career.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I think that wraps up today. Conferences are a go. We're going to see each other again and over and over. We're going to totally do this again.
I'm in if you are.
Great. Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
It's been fun. And but last but not least, architects keep designing and contractors keep making those blueprints reality. We'll see you on the next one.